This story took place about 30 years ago, but I will be telling it from a present perspective to make it easier. I'm a 38-year-old who used to work the graveyard shifts at a hotel in Beverly Hills. Cleaning carpets, floors, vacant rooms, etc. It was about 1:50 a.m. when I got a call to go clean room 722. So I stopped what I was doing and I took the elevator with my equipment and headed over there. I got to the room and knocked a few times. There weren't any signs of anyone there, so I used my key to get in. I opened the door just a few inches before it stopped opening. I shut the door and opened it again. This time I realized there was something blocking the doorway entrance. This was very strange. I thought, who will leave an item blocking the doorway, and how have they gotten out? I tried pushing my way through when suddenly I realized there was a bed blocking the entrance. When I pushed my way through just enough to stick my head in, my body completely froze in horror at what I just witnessed. An older woman laying in the bed with her head hanging down right off the corner of the bed. She had hair on her face and what looked to be like blood. I was paralyzed in fear. I couldn't even move. I shut the door as fast as I could and went back down to the lobby and called over a coworker of mine, and I just told him what I saw. You're just tired, he said. You need to come quick, you need to see this, I replied. So after a few minutes of convincing him, he finally agreed to go check it out with me. I gave him the key, and he gave me a look of hesitation before opening the door. But as soon as he did, he fell to the floor and almost passed out. I quickly pulled him to the side and shut the door and asked him if he was okay. What the hell was that? He said. This time we both rushed to the lobby and called the manager and explained everything to her. She brushed it off as a prank and ignored us. So we saw another one of our coworkers and decided to tell him what had happened since he was going to that floor also. He laughed when he heard our story and he said we shouldn't be making jokes like that. We handed him the key and kept a safe distance as he approached the door. He noticed how scared we both looked, instilling a look of fear in him as well. He opened the door and stuck his head in there and let out a loud scream and shut the door, and the three of us ran back downstairs into the lobby again. We explained everything to the manager, and this time she sent over security to go back and take a look with us. There was an eerie vibe in the elevator, as now the four of us made our way back to room 722. We arrived and handed the key to security. He slowly drew his gun and opened the door completely wide open. 5 minutes later, he came out and gave us a weird look. Do you guys do drugs? Do you guys drink, smoke something? There's nothing in there. There's not even a bed in there. The room is completely empty. We made our way back to the lobby and explained everything to our manager, which unfortunately led to the three of us taking a drug test, which came out normal as expected. I don't know what I saw that night, but all I know is I had two witnesses with me who believe what happened that night in room 722. I lived in a small apartment with my ex-husband in Glendale, California 18 years ago, which was rumored to be haunted. He never believed in any of that. I, on the other hand, did believe it and was always on edge. So there's not one specific story I can tell you, but dozens of small paranormal events that took place in which I will share. Event 1. One morning my husband and I were moving furniture in the living room as well as our TV and radio. While he went to buy us some lunch, I turned on the radio to have some music playing in the background, and it stayed like that until we finished that night. When we finished that night, he asked me, "How did you have the radio playing?" "What do you mean?" I said. "The radio has been disconnected since the morning, and I haven't connected it ever since. Our radio has been playing without even being plugged in." Event 2. I was changing in my room home alone one day while he was at work. I opened the closet to get my clothes out, and when I did, I saw an old man standing in the closet with bruises and a pale face. I don't know why, but I didn't feel scared or threatened, just more shock of what I had seen. I closed my eyes and then reopened them, and the man was no longer there. Event 3. I would often prepare dinner alone because my husband was working most of the day. One day I was in the kitchen getting ready to cook as I laid out all my ingredients on the left side of the counter, then quickly stepped out for a bit, only to come back and notice that all my ingredients were now placed on the right side of the counter. There was nobody home but me, and this would happen quite frequently. Event 4. During my pregnancy with my first baby boy, I would wake up every night around 3 in the morning and see a skull, kind of like a head floating around in my room. This would lead to an attack. An attack where you feel something heavy on top of your chest and won't let you breathe or talk. I would wake up my husband and the whole thing would stop. Event 5. When my baby boy was around 6 months old, my husband and I would leave him in his crib sleeping in our room while we would be in the living room watching TV. We heard a loud, violent cry as though something had happened to him, something had scared him. We ran to check up on him, and he was sleeping. Something made that crying sound, and it wasn't him. Event 6. We bought our baby boy a teddy bear so he can have it with him in the crib. One day he took a nap with the teddy bear. My husband and I were doing the usual watching TV, when suddenly we heard a loud, violent cry once again, and we ran to the room to check. This time he really was crying, like scared crying. Something terrified him. When we got close to pick him up, we noticed the stuffed animal we bought him was torn into several pieces. Now tell me, how many 6-month-old babies would have the strength to pick up a stuffed animal, let alone tear it into 1,000 pieces? Event 7. At times when I was alone, I would hear a dark feminine laughter coming from the closet door. Mind you, I have no one living with me, and the surrounding apartments were vacant. No one lived in them. Event 8. One day we played a cassette tape just to listen to music. The tape played just fine almost the whole way there up until it got close to the end. It began to slow down, and if you listen closely in the background you can hear people's voices, both men and women, screaming, kind of as though they were being tortured. Event 9. One night my parents slept over along with my little brother. All of us squeezed into my room. That night I woke up in the middle of the night and felt as though there were 50 people in the room watching me. I saw something like a cloud floating on top of my brother. I screamed and my parents woke up, and instantly it went away. Event 10. One day I was packing up and preparing to leave the apartment for good. I was in the kitchen and I was taking and cleaning all my silverware, and for some reason I thought it was a good idea to say goodbye to whatever was in that house. I'm leaving, you can have the space all to yourself again. Before I could finish the sentence, all the glass cups on the counter fell over and shattered into 1,000 pieces. Those are just some of the more popular events. We then later found out that the previous tenant who had lived there would practice some type of dark art, and someone in that apartment had committed suicide back in the early days when the apartment was just built. I guess that explains all the paranormal activity. When I graduated high school, my family and I moved to Massachusetts into an old Victorian style home. Definitely different from the rest of the houses we lived in before. We were soon greeted by our new neighbors who seemed very nice and welcoming. The family next door claimed they've heard screaming from within our house, and they swore they thought someone was already living there. The realtor was telling us that the house had been empty for a few years. Aside from the weird stories we would hear, we were happily getting adjusted to our new life. A few weeks later, I found myself home alone with my little sister at night while my parents were out of town. I was watching TV in the living room, and out of nowhere, the chairs in the kitchen start moving by themselves, and one chair even dragged itself my way. I let out a scream as the neighbors could hear. They rushed to the door and opened and found out what happened. They then called our parents and told us to stay in the house while my parents came. I've never experienced anything like that in my life before. Nobody moved those chairs. My little sister was right next to me. My parents finally showed up, and I told them what happened. The look on my mother's face was pure horror. She began to say, "Something happened to me last week that I haven't told you guys about." She said when she came home from work last week, she saw all the pictures in our home, including the Holy Cross on the floor, and thought it was some sick prank that we tried scaring her with. The neighbors then confessed to us that the previous tenants in our home complained of paranormal activity taking place. No wonder it had been vacant for so many years. We all had this unsettling feeling like we might not be safe in our own home. My dad suggested we all sleep in the same room together. Things were okay for a few days until strange things started happening again, such as hearing disturbing voices randomly listening to the radio, watching TV, waking up in the middle of the morning with the blankets on the floor, finding random scratches in my abdomen area, but mainly and most consistently, our holy cross on the ground. One Saturday morning, we put on a VHS movie tape, and for some odd reason it wouldn't play. It just showed a staticky white noise screen. Shortly after, I joke not, a voice appeared through that said, "Margaret." My mom shut the thing off and we all took a walk in the park and stayed there until my dad got off of work. That same night, we were all sleeping in the same room, and I remember my 10-year-old sister sleep talking, which she never does. Her sleep talking became more and more constant until she almost began to chant, "Margaret, Margaret, Margaret," faster and faster until I woke up my parents. My mom grabbed her and shook her until she came back to her senses. "Leave us alone!" my dad screamed to whatever was tormenting us. And almost simultaneously the lights shut on and off, the water faucet turned on, our radios turned on, just to hear nothing but the white noise. We had to leave that night. We moved with my uncle who lives 10 minutes away from the house and have sold the house ever since. I don't know what the history of that place is, nor do I care to find out, but that's my story of the creepy old house.